So welcome back. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving break, or at least a great couple days off. Hopefully you were able to take a few days off and relax a bit. I apologize that it's not very warm in here, though it is warmer than it is outside, so that's about the best I can offer at this point. I have complained a bunch about the heat in this room, and according to Daniel this morning, the heat did come on at 4. So it's been trying to catch up, but with all these windows and the sub-freezing temperatures, it is what it is. So hopefully by the end of class it'll be reasonably warm. Okay, so we don't have much time left in class. We have today, we have Wednesday, then we have the following week, and then we have the final, or your portfolio's due. So it's really, really fast from here on out. I think that's one of the fun things about the fall semester is we get a late break and Thanksgiving break, and then all of a sudden put your head down and it's over. So now is not the time to give up. Now is the time to put your head down and make sure you can get through it. We're going to continue with similar process to what we've been doing in terms of trying to get good line drawings, collages out of SketchUp. Last class we did the elevation. Today we're going to do a plan. On Wednesday we'll do a section, and then on Monday we'll do a perspective. And so between all of those, you should get a pretty good sense for how to get good quality stuff out of SketchUp, which is certainly the goal. And then next Wednesday, we'll work on the portfolios one more time. We'll talk about binding strategies, etc. And then you'll come back and turn in your portfolios, and everything's done, at least for this class. So it's a pretty quick trajectory from here on out. So I went ahead and I opened up my SketchUp model from last class. And I have it just from right where it was before. I'm going to go back for a second into the perspective view. So let me go first to an ISO, and then let me go to perspective so that we can see this a little bit better. And let me go back to my going to window, and then styles is already up. And I'm going to go back to hidden line style so we can see my overall model like that. So there it is. We just did the elevation view. Now we're going to do a plan view. And so the plan view, we're going to use the section tool that's built into SketchUp to actually cut the plan and to cut the top half of our building off. Typically speaking, in a plan view, we set the plan at 4 feet above where the finished floor is. And we do that in practice because it's above where the kitchen cabinets are. It cuts through most windows that are in the building, and it's below the upper cabinets in a kitchen. So it's a pretty good spot to kind of cut through. Obviously, it cuts through the doors, gives us a good sense of the floor plan. So when we're setting up to cut this, we need to be able to cut the plan at 4 feet above wherever the finished floor is. And so I have some space below where the finished floor is in this view because I modeled in a little bit of extra space underneath for the terrain or whatever. And so I need to make my section cut a little bit higher. And so what I'd recommend when you're doing this is to actually create a box that's off here in space somewhere that will give us a reference point for where we're going to cut this floor plan. So I'll start with just a box. It doesn't really matter what the size of the box is, something like this, but it needs to not be attached to your building. I'll then use the push-pull tool here, and I'm going to raise this up to be even with just the floor of my building. So that compensates for the foundation, so to speak. Then I'm going to move it up a little bit further, and we'll go up by 4 feet. And I'll type in 4 feet, and now that box is 4 feet above where the finished floor of my building is. So I did it in 2 operations so that I could see where it is. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and make sure, if you don't have this toolbar on the left side of your screen, it's called the large tool set, and I can go and get it from going to view and then toolbars, and then check the box for the large tool set if you don't already have it. Okay, which I obviously have it up already. And from here on the left side, at the very bottom, there's a tool that looks like a circle with kind of a triangle around it. It's the universal section tool. If we were in a working drawing class, you guys would know what that symbol means. But for right now, you just need to be looking for that symbol. We'll go ahead and click on it, and you can see that it gives me, in this case, a green plane. and that plane will shift around depending on what I move the mouse over. Right? We're concerned with it looking down, so we want the arrows to be facing down. If we were cutting a section, which we'll do next class, we're going to have the arrows pointing one direction or the other direction through the building. But for what we want it pointing down, and I'm going to use my box that I created here to make sure that it's at the correct height. So it is at the correct height, and I'll go ahead and I'll click, and when I do that, it creates a very large section plane, larger than my drawing itself, and I end up with a view, let me go into orbit here, that cuts through my building and shows me what the plan of that building would be. Now, my building's a little bit underdeveloped. It still needs a little bit more work. I need to cut the hole for the closet. I need to cut my doors, etc. But the bulk of what I'm trying to do still applies. Okay? You guys will be a little bit further along. If I zoom out further, we can see this very large orange section plane. All right? If I select the section plane, it'll turn blue. Right? If I deselect it, it'll turn orange. The other thing to be aware of is that the section plane actually kind of shades or tints the drawing a little bit. So if I were to just do an export at this point, I would see a kind of a grayish tint over my drawing. So we're going to make sure when we do the exports of the 2D graphics that that's going to be turned off. Okay? But before that, assuming that it's been installed correctly on these computers, we're going to use a special tool that's called the Section Tools or Section Cut Face plugin. Right? And it should already be installed, but I haven't confirmed it on these imaged machines that they are installed. So you're going to have to check and see if it is installed for you. When I select the section so that it's blue, if I right-click, it should, which of course on my computer it doesn't, should say Add Section Face, Add Section Cut Face. Do you guys get that on yours? Yeah, a few of you. Okay. So in my machine, that hasn't been installed, so I don't get to demonstrate it. You'll select from that menu, Add Section Cut Face, and when you do that, it will fill in. Of course, my computer's crashing on me right now. It will fill in your model all of these open walls. Right? It may also fill in some of the large floor plans, in which case you'll have to go in and edit those and remove that. But by filling in the walls, you get a little bit better result of your plan. And so I apologize that mine's not working. I will try to install it, but I'm not going to make you sit here and watch me install it. So anyway, now that I have this, I want to look at my view as a plan. So I'm going to go to my camera, and I'm going to go to Standard Views, and I'm going to click on Top. And when I click on Top, I see a plan view. But in this case, we could see by these vanishing lines, right, that this is still in perspective. So once again, I have to go to Camera and change from perspective to parallel projection. And when I do that and look down on my model, I get what looks like a traditional plan view. Okay? So now I'm going to zoom a little bit so that I can see my model kind of centered here in the page. And then I want to turn off a few things. So I'll go to View. I'm going to turn off the axes because I don't want them. I'm going to turn off the section planes. If I turn off the section cuts, my section cut goes away and I see the roof, which I don't want. So we're going to make sure that section cuts is on. And I'm also going to turn off my guides. So I'll go to View and uncheck for guides. Okay? And so this gives me a very basic line drawing of my building. And so I'll go ahead with this and save the scene. So let me go to Window and then Scenes. And remember, we had front elevation saved before. We're going to also save our floor plan. Now, if you had a multi-story building, you might have to do 2 floor plans, right, depending. For right now, we're just doing 1 floor plan. All that's required for today is to do 1 floor plan, so you don't need to do more than that. So I'm going to call this floor plan, and that's saved now. So we can go ahead and close it. And notice now I can switch between my front elevation view there and my floor plan view right there. Right? So it's flipping around so that I can see it. North is pointed up in this view, which is exactly what I want. Okay? So I have this saved. The first thing that I'm going to do is go to File, Export 2D Graphic. right? And this should start to be a little bit routine at this point. And we'll go into today's folder. And we'll call this Fall 2015. And we'll call this Lines. Oops. And this is 129. There we go. And I'll go ahead and go to Options. And I'll make sure that my width and height is larger. Right? I've unchecked the Use View Size, and I'm increasing the size here. We'll go up one more. We'll go at 5,000. And I'll go ahead and say OK. And then I'll go ahead and export. Now, one of the things that's important to recognize in this is that the drawing that we're creating is not in a specific scale. It's not at 1/4 inch equals a foot, right? It's completely arbitrary. And so if it becomes important to have it scaled correctly, we're going to have to do the scaling manually after the fact. So in InDesign or something like that when we're doing the layout. And I can show you how to do that. It's not necessarily critical right now, but generally floor plans are in a specific scale. You know, 1/8 inch equals a foot or 1/4 inch equals a foot. And so you may have to do some manual work to get that. Okay? So it's already there. We'll click on Export. All right, so we have that. Now, if I go, I want some shadows, but if I go to View and then I turn on Shadows, right, we'll see the shadows here, but notice that my half-height walls are also casting shadows inside my building, which is less than ideal. So in this case, I'm going to go to View and I'm going to uncheck Section Cuts so that I can get the shadows on the ground outside the building that are the size of the building with the roof on it. Okay, so I have that shown here. I'm going to go ahead and go into my styles, and under Edit, I'm going to turn off edges, so I end up with just the shadows. Okay. Now this can be a little bit problematic depending on what your building looks like, because you're going to get confusing results of what's inside and what's outside the building. And I'll show you how to sort those out in just a second. I am going to adjust my time of day slightly to see if I can get a better shadow. Yeah, something like that shows my building a little bit better. So I'm going to do that shadow instead. All right, so let me go ahead and export these shadows. I'll go to File, Export, 2D Graphic. And I will call this Shadows. And then I'll go back to View, and I'm going to uncheck Shadows. And I'm going to check Section Cuts. And we'll turn back on my edges. Right? And so now we need to make some adjustments again. And this is very similar to what I've done before. We'll go from the hidden line. It may or may not be relevant to do an Xray view. Right? If I go here and I go to Edit, and then I go to Faces and I turn on Xray, don't really see anything here. Potentially, if I had more stuff in my building, it might be relevant. But you're trying this out to see. If I turned off the section cuts, we get kind of the Xray view of the building itself. But again, I don't really see too much. I get a little bit of a line there for these roof overhangs. Don't know how relevant that's really going to be, so I may skip this as an export. Okay, I'll move on, and I'm going to go to my sketchy edges, and I'm going to pick my pen gray, if I can find it. Pen gray, there it is. And my sections are shown. Right? I'll go ahead and go to File, Export, 2D Graphic. And we'll call this pen, maybe. I'll go ahead and export. All right, then I can go up and use the airbrush with the endpoints. That one might look a little bit better, so let me go ahead and go to File, Export, 2D Graphic. And I'll call this airbrush. And again, just because I pick these particular styles doesn't mean you have to pick them as well. It's just something that I think works fairly well. Okay, so those are all done now, right? Now I'm going to switch over into Photoshop. So let me go ahead and open up Photoshop. And I'll go to File and Open, and I'm going to open the basic line drawing. There it is. All right, if we zoom in a little bit, we can see that it's all there. I'm going to go ahead and go to File, Place, and I'll place in each of these others. We'll start with the shadows. I'll say OK. We'll go to File, Place. I'll place in the pen. All right, and I'll go to File, Place. And I'll bring in the airbrush. OK, so all of those have been put in place. I want to switch the three of these. Instead of being in the normal blending mode, I'm going to go to the multiply in all likelihood, which is now allowing me to look through all of those views. Okay, so let me do Control minus here so we can see it a little bit better. Control plus. Okay, so if we look at this building, I'm going to concentrate on the shadows for just a second. Okay, so here's the shadows. We can see that the shadows are being cast from the building, right, looking out here. Likewise, they're being cast here to there. Okay. Now, I'm a little bit fortunate because I don't have strong overhangs that I have to compensate for. You may have overhangs, in which case you may have to fill in certain shadows. Okay. I do, however, have an overhang right in here where that particular piece, if I were to zoom in, right, should all be filled in. This should all be in shadow as well. Okay? So I have to do a little bit of compensation on the shadows layer, right, for that lack of shadow in this area. So let me go ahead, and I'm going to do this with the polygonal lasso tool because I think that's the fastest way of doing it. And I'm going to go ahead and start to select a region. Right along here. Come up, and then I'll come over and close it. So now I have that region selected. I'm going to use, again, I'm on the shadows layer. I'm going to use the paintbrush tool, and I'm going to use the eyedropper tool here to select that as a color, which it is. And then I'll go back to the paintbrush on this layer. Why is it not letting me? The smart object must be rasterized before proceeding. That's OK. We'll go ahead and say OK. And now I can go ahead and paint. Right? But because I put this selection in, I'm not going to paint past that line. Right? And I can actually make this brush a little bit bigger, save myself some time, and we can paint that particular section in. Right? So now that that's painted in, it looks like the shadow should look. Okay? As I'm looking at this a little bit closer, in all reality, the shadow probably needs to come through those little pieces as well. So I'll make a quick selection of those pieces. And then I can hold down Shift and continue and select another region. And we'll hold down Shift. All right, so those are selected as well. Again, I'm on the shadows layer. With the paintbrush, we can paint those in as well. Now, it looks like it's darkening up that pre-existing line that's there. Let me take a quick look here. Yeah. OK, so on my background layer is that little bit of gray. So this may need a little bit more careful selection so that I don't end up. Let me undo for a second here. See how I darkened those shadows? I'm not sure I want those darkened. So I may do a little bit more careful of a selection. where I don't select too much of that existing line, something like that. And then I'll have to deselect certain regions as I go forward. It's fine for right now. You don't have to watch me fine-tune it. But you can see where that makes a difference. So that's now installed correctly. Now if I look at my little staircase over here, there shouldn't be shadows in the staircase because they're not, right, this little wall isn't casting a shadow into the stair. It's casting this shadow onto the roof of the stair. That makes sense. So that part needs to go away. So we'll go ahead and select this part of the shadows, and we'll delete so that that goes away. I'm missing a few stairs because I didn't actually model them. That's why you're not seeing the stairs, but the stairs come all the way down to the edge of that wall. Right? As we're looking down here, right, this shadow is cast on this patio that's outside, so we'll leave that part of the shadow. But this shadow here is being cast on the roof, right, that's up above. So we need to get rid of this piece of the shadow. Like that. Right. Now this shadow should be filled in all the way to there so that it touches the building. So I'll zoom in. I'll select this part of the building. I'll use the eyedropper to match the color. And then I'll use the paintbrush and fill in that part of the shadow as well. Okay. So now that's been applied correctly. And I have this area here that also should be in shadow in the front. So let me come over here. And once again, I'll make a selection. And then I'll go ahead and paint in that selection. So that that matches. So a lot of this takes just an intuitive understanding of what your building looks like and where those shadows should actually be cast or shouldn't be cast. This piece on my outdoor patio here, right? The shadow's technically cast there. I can choose to leave it or not. It's really a matter of preference as to whether I want the shadow being cast there. It's accurate and it can be cast. If I'm going to leave the shadow here, I should probably fill in this region as well because it's outside, and it would be under the overhang and filled with shadow as well. So I'm going to go ahead and really quickly do that section. That, and we'll again paint it into there. Okay, so that one's too dark as a shadow, so let me resample with this color, and then we'll go back and paint that in to match the correct color. Okay, so if I do Control 0 now, we can see that I've adjusted my shadows. I have a little bit darker shadow on the ground than I do. That's one of the SketchUp things that SketchUp does than I do on the patio here, but that's okay. Okay. So I have those done. I'm going to turn off the background for a second so we can see just the shadows that have been applied. And now I'm going to do a little bit of dodging and burning to selectively enhance the shadows. Okay? So let me go ahead and create a dodging and burning layer. And again, this is Photoshop 1.5 that I'm doing right now. I'm going to go to Layer, New Layer. And we'll call this Dodge and Burn Shadows. And I'll go ahead and say OK. And oops, made a mistake. Hold on. Layer, New Layer, Dodge and Burn Shadows. Mode is going to be set to Overlay, and it's going to fill with the neutral 50% gray. I'll go ahead and say OK. There's my Dodge and Burn Shadows. And now I'm going to work within this region. So I don't want some of these pieces to apply to my, my darkening here that I'm going to be working on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a color selection to select only the regions that I want to work on. So let me go ahead and select color range, and I'm going to select this as my primary color, and I'm also going to select this as a secondary color. Actually, I'm going to change this so that all I have selected is the white here. We'll go ahead and say OK. And you see that I have that nice solid selection of just those shadows. Now I'll use the dodge and burn tool. So we'll start with the burn tool, adjust my bracket here, my brush, and I'm going to darken where it's against the house. Right, a little bit there, a little bit in there, a little bit in there. A little bit there. There, a little bit there. So this takes a little bit of practice to see where it's important to have the shadows be a little bit darker. Right? Remember, if I think that these end up being too dark, I can always adjust the opacity of the dodge and burn layer, and I'll get a little bit less darkening of the shadows. So let me go ahead and turn back on my floor plans. Right? And we can see that the shadows have been darkened up in some of the corners of the building, which helps. I can also lighten the outside edges. So if I went to the dodge tool, and I made this a little bit bigger, and again I'm on that layer, I can soften the outer edges of the shadows just a little bit, which may or may not be something you want to do, but you get the idea. Right? I can do the same thing with this shadow, and again I can turn it on and turn it off depending on whether I like it or I don't like it. Okay? So let me go ahead and turn that back on. Okay, so I have the background here. I'm going to layer from background just so that it's its own layer. And I want to spend a minute and kind of organize up my layers a little bit. So this shadow and this are both shadows. So let me select them both. And then down here, there's an icon, right? It's over there, that says create a group. And when I create a group, there it is, I can call this group shadows, which means that those two layers, oops, I have to drag these two layers in, are now part of the shadows layer, or shadows group, which allows me to expand and contract them. As I continue working forward, I'm going to end up with lots and lots of layers, especially when we get to the section view. And as we do these layers, if you're not keeping track, your layer panel here can have hundreds of layers in it. And so we want to try to organize them together. I'm going to rename this to be base lines, so we know that that's the base lines layer. And then we'll continue working forward. Right? These two could be part of a group if I wanted to. That could be, we'll call this artistic overlay, because those are the airbrush layers that add a little bit more to it. So we'll put those two in the artistic overlay layer. So now the advantage here is I have the dodge and burn shadows, and I have the shadows layer. I can turn both of them off by turning the group off, right? Or I can turn them off individually. So it starts to work a little bit more in my favor. So let's turn off the artistic overlay, and let's turn off the shadows. I'm going to press Control-0, right, so that I'm seeing just my plan view here. And now I want to play around a little bit with some lighting effects. Okay, so let me go ahead and I'm going to create a new layer. And on that new layer, we're going to call this lighting. And it looks like it put it inside the shadows, so we're going to pull that out with lighting. And I'm going to change the mode of this to be soft light. And actually, I should probably do some collaging first because we're not going to see this very well. Let me pause on the lighting, and I'm going to go do a couple other things first, and then I'll come back to the lighting. I'm going to add another layer. And, well, I don't need to add it quite yet. I'm going to go ahead and put some flooring in this so that I can differentiate the different spaces. I'll start with some kind of a hardwood floor. And we've spent some time way back in class where we did those tiling textures. I think it would be really nice if I went back and found one of the tiling textures that I liked. So let me go ahead and go to File and then Place. And I have some of these already on my flash drive. So let me go into Resources. And let me see here. Thought they were in here. There we go. Okay, so here, oops. I have a wood floor texture. Okay, it might be a little bit big, so I'll use my transform, which is currently selected, to make this a little bit smaller, right, so that it feels like it's about the right size, something like that. And I'll go ahead and say OK, because it's now been placed into the scene. Now I need to copy and paste it, so I'll select it, and I don't have to be too careful when I do this. And I'll Control-C and Control-V, which is the same thing as copy and paste if I went to the Edit menu. And then I'm going to place these side to side, like this. And you can see that because this is a tiling texture, right, they stack together as a seamless set of textures. Looks like I need a little bit more here, so we'll drop that one in, and a little bit more right there. So as I do that, all of these show up as separate layers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I want all of those to be on one layer, so I'll select them all, right-click, and say Merge Layers, right, which merges the selected layers, and I'm going to call this layer Flooring. Okay? So now I need to cut out the flooring so that it's applied just to the rooms and not to the stuff that I don't want it to be applied to. Okay? So I'm going to do this with a mask. So let me go ahead and turn everything off except my original floor plan. Right? And now I'll go ahead and use the magic wand tool, which is right here, to select, oops, I need to be on my floor plan layer, so that I can select everywhere that there is a floor. So there and there. Right, there, there. And it selected part of this which is outside, which I don't want to be selected. So I'm going to go back in, now that I've used my magic wand, and I'll hold down Alt, which is the subtract, and I'm going to subtract off the outside patio so that it's not part of this selection. And I want to add this piece here. So I'm holding down Shift to add to the selection, and I want to add this piece right there. Okay, so now I have this room, the hallway, and the bedrooms, and the bathroom. Both, or all of those, need to be on the flooring. So I'm going to select the flooring, click on the flooring, and then click on Add Layer Mask, and it's going to clip for me. Why did it clip that part out? Now it looks like I missed the section here. That's the advantage of a mask. Oh, whoops. Hold on a second. I forgot to merge this one piece in. Let me back up here for a second. I skipped that when I merged them. So let me go ahead and merge layers. There we go. Now they're all merged in. And we'll go ahead and create that layer mask again. And now I have the wood texture going all the way through all of the floor on my particular house. Okay? It's probably a little bit strong, so I'm going to change the opacity down so that it's not quite so strong, maybe 75%, something like that. So it's not overpowering in this particular piece. Okay? The other thing that may be helpful, so that's the flooring section, is that I may want to do the same thing for the exterior pieces. So maybe that should be like a concrete texture or something like that. So let me go ahead and I'll go to File and then Place, and I'm going to bring in a concrete texture. Got a concrete here, and we'll just use a basic concrete. All right, something like that. I need this to get a lot smaller. Right, maybe something like that. And let me copy it. And there it is. And let me go ahead and move this around so that it's covering up that part. And we'll also cover up this part. That would represent my stairs. So there we are. Again, I have to take these layers and merge visible, or excuse me, merge layers, not merge visible. This one can go away because I don't need that one. And now I end up again with the concrete, and I'm going to apply it the same way. So I'll go back to my baselines. I'll use my magic wand selection to select this and to select this. But this time I don't want, so I'll hold down Alt. Let me zoom in a bit. Any of that or any of this. So now I have just the outdoor space. Probably should add where the stairs should be. And then subtract off this wall. Like that. Okay, so now those are selected. And again, if I turn on the concrete layer and then I click on the Add Layer Mask, that then moves. Wrong layer. There we go. Add Layer Mask. And that then shows the concrete in those particular sections. Again, it's probably too strong, so we'll drop that way back so that it's just kind of a light grayish color. We'll turn back on the floor. And now we have those two regions shown. Now, right now the walls are in white. That may end up being advantageous. It may not be. We have to decide. I could fill in all the walls. I'm not going to do it quite yet, but I want to show that that is an option at this point. But what I want to concentrate on for a little bit is providing some background texture behind this floor plan, right? Some sense of ground. And this is a very challenging one to find the right scale image to use as a background. So again, I'll go to search.creativecommons.org. And I've found, searching Flickr, that some of the best imagery comes from kite aerial photography because it's about the right scale. Right? Airplane overhead imagery is a little bit too far away, not detailed enough. Kites seem to be about the right ballpark. So I'll do kite aerial. I cannot spell this morning. All right. And so as we look down, you can see a lot of people like to do this on the beach for whatever reason. But there are some images, something like this, right, that are about the right scale for what we're trying to do. And so you have to spend a little bit of time searching for the right view. This one could be okay. Right? We're probably not going to find the best image of this because it's, let me see if we can get Meadow. No. Right. Part of it is you can't do an image that's like this where it's on an angle. We need to be looking straight down. And so we have to find the right image. I already have some images that I've pulled from before that may be advantageous. If I go to my flash drive, let me go ahead and go to File, Place, and let's see what I can find here. Let's see. That's not what I wanted. All right, this one's a little bit on the desolate side, but it'll probably work. Right, where I have this image with a little bit of scrub brush. Let me go ahead and make it a little bit larger. Something like that. and I'll go ahead and say OK. All right, so we get a sense for this particular scale. I'm not that happy with it. I probably should spend a little bit more time finding the right texture, but I don't want you guys to wait and see me just searching the internet for the right image. So I may need to move and adjust the trees a bit. So let me go ahead and have this selected, and I'm going to temporarily change the opacity down because it's not really going to help in doing this if I have a tree that's either too close to the building or too far away from the building. Right? So like there, for example, this tree is right next to the building. It's kind of awkward. So I'm going to continue moving until I find excuse me, a reasonably good view here. The other thing about this is if I turn back on my shadows, right, my shadows are going in this direction, and in this image, the shadows are going that direction. Right? So I have to make sure that the shadows match. So let me go back to this image, and I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and I'm going to flip horizontal first. Okay, so now we're going in that direction. It's getting closer. Then we go to Edit, Transform, and we'll flip vertical. All right, so now they're going close. One more horizontal. Sorry. Edit, Transform, flip horizontal. Sorry. And so now my shadows are going roughly in the same direction. Again, I need to make some adjustments for where the trees are going to fall, right? So that they're close but not directly impacting my building. So there they are. If we're looking at them, they're awfully close. It's possible that I might need to go to a free transform. Let me zoom out a little bit and do a little bit of a rotation on them so that they're just that much more in line with my particular building. So it's probably something about like that. And I'll go ahead and say OK. And now I can bring up the opacity again. Right? So now we're looking down on my particular piece of ground. Okay? So let me go ahead and turn back on. We'll turn everything off except for the base lines. And for now, I'm going to move. I'll turn this off. And I need to select the stuff that's inside versus outside my building. Right? So I'll do a magic wand of the outside of the outside of my building. So it's everything outside the building, which is reasonably close, except I want to add back in the part that should be my stairs. So let me go ahead and subtract the part that should be, oops, that was not what I wanted. Part that should be my stairs. So right there. Okay, so I have that selected now. I'm going to go to my background image here, and I'm going to go ahead and just select the inverse, and then I'll press the delete key. Oops. I have to rasterize this first. Let me right-click on the layer and rasterize layer, and then I can press the delete key. Right, which lets my building show through. Right? But I can also turn back on my shadows. There. Okay. The problem is that my ground really needs to be at the bottom of my whole stack here. So it's something like that. And so now the shadows are shining onto the ground. Right? My building is sitting up in front. Looks like my shadows are a little bit too intense. So let's take them down a bit. Right, something like that. We're trying to match the shadow to the existing shadows. Right, so maybe something like that. Okay. I also think that toning down the background might be advantageous. So I'm going to take the background and I'm going to adjust the opacity of the background down, which means I can also adjust the opacity of the shadows down a little bit more, so that it becomes a little bit more of a drawing and a little bit less of the photorealistic background. So now I have that on there. I'll go ahead and turn back on my flooring, right, and my concrete. So now we can see, right, how those are starting to come together. Right? I told you that I'd come back to lighting, which is less important than this. Nah, let's hold off until the section lecture because that'll make a little bit more sense as we go forward. Okay, so we've done materials to walls and floors, background imagery, and we've done shadows. So this is the goal today, right? Something like this, where we have some floor plan that's integrated into the site itself. I'm not a huge fan of this background. I may continue tweaking it to try to make it a little bit better looking. Part of it is because it's in a desert. I think this is supposed to be in a forest, so we need to make a few adjustments. But anyway, you get the idea. So this is very much about collaging some textures. You may have furniture and cabinets and stuff in your building, which is even better. You'll have more detail in the plans than I'm showing here, but you get a sense for what it looks like. The one other thing that I did say, let me turn back on my artist overlay layers. That darkens it up a little bit. You may want to fill in the walls, right, which can be an option. If I did a new layer by itself here, we can call this walls. And let me put it directly above that. Turn everything off. Let's minimize these for a second. I can use Magic Wand to select the insides of the walls. Oops. There. Hold down Shift to add to it. I'll take that. Take this. Take this. What I'm missing. This. This. Okay, so all of the walls are selected now. On the walls layer, I'm going to paint in black with my brush, and I'm going to paint in the walls. And the advantage of doing this way is that I can choose if I like this, or I can adjust the opacity if I don't like it. All right, press Control-0. There. So now all of the walls are filled in. Okay. And I'm going to change the walls layer to be a multiply. Right. And so now, if I start to turn on my pieces, right, with the artistic overlay, I have this as a set of black lines, or I can turn this off and see it as a set of white lines. And you can see that the look is very different, okay, in terms of how you're seeing the plan. And again, it's up to you as to which one looks right. Looks like I missed a little piece right there that needs to be filled in. So it's really up to you. This one stands out a little bit more. This one is a little bit lighter, but again, it's about whatever the look is. I can also take the walls layer here if I didn't like it, and I could adjust the opacity down to make it any shade of gray in between pure white and pure black. All right, so by doing it that way, I have a lot of flexibility in what it looks like. All right, are there any questions? No? Okay, I'll turn you loose on a plan.